It's time for another book review, and today's book is Nirel by Sarah Rajah. Now, before we start, as always, here is your list of tropes and triggers. If you're not interested in those tropes or triggers, please feel free to skip this book. Feel free to skip this review. That being said, if you are looking for a book that starts with a bang and then pisses you off because it ends on a cliffhanger and you're ready for book 2 right now, this book is for you. So this book centers around, shockingly enough, Nirel, who is our main character. And the plot of this book kind of changes as it continues, which I found very fascinating. But the plot part that kind of stays the same is Nirel is a healer in this world, and healers are very, very rare. And when her family discovered that what she is a healer, rather than turn her into the kingdom like they were supposed to, they hid her talent, they hid her abilities. And then one day soldiers came to her town kind of looking for anybody that could help them in their war, people that could be soldiers, or for instance, people like her mother who is an apothecary healer. They were looking for people like that, and Warren mouthed off, and Warren is the brother, and got stabbed. And so when faced with the choice of healing him or letting him die, Nirel showed her abilities and was immediately taken into custody by Jace, who is one of our other main characters, to be taken to the capital. As Jace and Nirel are on their way to the capital, they kind of start to have this romance blooming, which I really, really enjoyed. And then when they get to the capital, a man named Corvin is introduced. I personally am not a huge fan of love triangles. I've never really been a big fan of love triangles. They've never, I don't know, they never struck my fancy. But I think this is one of the few times that I actually really enjoyed a love triangle in the book. And this book kind of follows a similar path where she picks somebody that makes her happy or somebody that she doesn't really know. And then as she gets to know them and that path continues, she ultimately ends up kind of making a choice, at least for this book, that I actually very much agreed with, but it didn't negate any of the emotions or the feelings that she had. Now, circling back to Corvin, Corvin also has magical powers, and Corvin is a seer. And what I really liked about his ability as a seer was that the author actually described in detail how it worked and how it affected him. So seeing something wasn't just this magical process or anything like that. It was actually a very painful thing for him to deal with and a painful thing for him to process. His eyes would turn black and kind of like bug out of his head, and he would need to rest, and he'd get all these headaches. And I liked that because it's not, I am mystical and I can see the future. No. And then on top of that, not only could he see the future, he could see multiple different versions of the future. And then he could, say, oh, well, what if I take this person out of this scenario? What happens then? So he could kind of predict a more accurate future, but he still wasn't infallible. His predictions could be wrong, and I really like that. The other thing that I really, really loved about this book was, whether or not the author intended to it, was the way that she touched on purity culture. I personally hate purity culture. I don't think purity culture is a great thing. I think we should be educating everybody on sex and what goes on with sex and about bodies and things like that. And in this book, Nirel has lived a whole life of purity. She doesn't kiss, she doesn't hug, she doesn't touch. I do believe, if I remember correctly, they grow their hair long to symbolize their purity. And then she kisses somebody and she feels this regret and this remorse, and she feels kind of like dirty because she did it. And then when she's really, really scared, she ends up sleeping with somebody. And when I say sleeping with somebody, I literally mean she lays in bed next to him and sleeps. There's nothing sexual. There's nothing intimate. It's just she's scared. And when she's caught in this person's bed, she feels this deep shame. And I love that the author touched on this and how Nirel kind of starts to grow from this culture. The last thing of note in this book is how it tackles time travel. We've all read time travel books. We've all read really awful time travel books. And I really liked in this book how time is kind of fluid and it can be changed. And Nirel is not only a healer, but she's also able to move through time. But not only is Nirel able to go through time, there's actually specific people that try to stop people that move through time. They're like, no, don't mess with time's flow, don't touch time's flow. And I really enjoyed that as well. I think the one thing I didn't like about this book was how it ended, and not that the ending wasn't good. Obviously, I want book 2. I'm already ready for it, and the author was kind enough to let me know that it's probably going to be out later this year. But the ending was so fast-paced with so many different things happening that it was kind of hard to keep track of everything all at once. I kind of wish that it had slowed down, maybe taken a few more pages to explain everything, because it did get confusing and I did have to reread it a couple times. Overall, I did give this book a 5 out of 5. I did really enjoy it. It's not quite young adult, but it's not quite like adult. There's a couple sex scenes, but they're very tame, and I would know. But definitely a 5 out of 5. I did really enjoy this. Thank you so much for watching. I do sincerely appreciate it. Definitely go check out this author and this book, and like, follow, and subscribe. I do post book reviews on Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you so much, and you can find me here.